I love it here. I don't want to leave. So there's an interim step. I don't think I'll ever leave. Carry me out in the box, frankly. I'm staying. I love it here. I'll stay and fight and do my best. But investing is a different issue. I am not investing anymore in pure South African businesses. I'm looking for businesses that have international potential, or at least the option of having, 80% plus hard currency revenues. I'm not risking any, and I'm not investing outside of the Western Cape. Forget it. I'm not going near KZN Natal. Sorry about that.
So Rob Hersov is really boisterous and vociferous in his complaint for the direction of where South Africa is going, and actually bold enough to really claim that, he's really not interested in investing in South Africa anymore, especially from the perspective of an entrepreneur and an investor who has really invested a lot in a lot of businesses in South Africa. Let's listen to what he speaks about in this interview on Biz News, and I'll be back for some really interesting analysis.
What are your international contacts and connections saying about what they're seeing happening in South Africa? And what are you telling them?
Well, I'm telling them if MK and EFF are part of government, head for the hills. They'd be crazy to invest. And I believe that is the case. We do need some combination of the ANC, DA, and IFP, whether it's a formal coalition, which I think Jacob Zuma would welcome, because if the DA is in a formal coalition, they're not in opposition. Who becomes opposition? MK. And they're going to be super disruptive. So that's one option, is a formal coalition. Someone gets president, someone gets vice president, maybe there's an independent president, cabinet ministries get shared up. That's commitment, and go for it. The second option, which Frans Cronje and others have been touting, is the separation of executive and legislative through a confidence and supply arrangement. That too is the best solution we can look at. Formal coalition, all that. To me, it's much of a muchness, either or. But I mean, that's where we have to be going. That's where I pray we can go. My only worry is that ANC-DA tie-up means the ANC will lose further support. And I know it won't happen because the election's over. But I think you'll have a number of ANC MPs who won't go with that. Who won't want to vote with those matters. But as long as they can get the 51 to defend against a no confidence vote, and to ensure that the DA and the multi-party coalition participants, IFP would be definitely one of them, get the positions they require to have the oversight necessary. Those are the only two solutions where we can survive the next 5 years.
Rob, you did a Harvard MBA, and we know that if you studied at Harvard, you have a fantastic group of contacts around the world. You've had top positions internationally and run big international businesses. So all of those contacts, all of the people who have been WhatsApping you and phoning you, what are they saying to you about our country right now?
They've had it with South Africa. I mean, it's just like Looney Tunes down here. The fact that 64% of our, voting population support socialist political parties, 64%. That the sort of hopefuls of Action SA and BOSA didn't really fire, and that the DA did a very good job, a very good showing of staying around 22%. But that's it. It's Looney Tunes down here. Most of my international friends and investors really just are not interested in investing in South Africa. There are too many other good options elsewhere. And why blame them? We have to survive the next 5 years. We've got to muddle through, and the Phoenix has got to, come out in 2029 and save us. Expropriation without compensation kicking in. Taking away our firearms, disarming the population is a no-go. Okay? Once they disarm us, you know what comes next. And my wife loves it in South Africa, doesn't want to leave. I love it here. I don't want to leave. So there's an interim step. I don't think I'll ever leave. Carry me out in the box, frankly. I'm staying. I love it here. I'll stay and fight and do my best. But investing is a different issue. I am not investing anymore in pure South African businesses. I'm looking for businesses that have international potential, or at least the option of having, 80% plus hard currency revenues. I'm not risking any, and I'm not investing outside of the Western Cape. Forget it. I'm not going near KZN Natal. Sorry about that.
Yeah, so what do you guys think? I think it's really interesting but sad in a way about how, foreign direct investment actually in South Africa might take a turn, depending on the kind of talks for government of national unity or coalitions that might take place in a few days. But for this video, I thought to analyze from a report I actually found on Reuters. It speaks about how South Africa's assets actually have gained recently in the rise of a market-friendly coalition. So the market is actually seeming to perceive a certain positivity, in the talks, a market-friendly positivity in that regard. And so, the market has a life and a mind of its own, and that it senses that from the political space, the character of the political space, what probably might go on, and this informs investors' choices and decisions in making investments in the country. It speaks about how South Africa's rand, stocks, government bonds gained on Monday, last Monday, as investors bet on the prospect of an ANC striking a coalition deal with a market-friendly party after gaining a majority in last week's election. So the markets actually really are believing and hoping and trusting in President Cyril Ramaphosa, as leaning more towards a market-friendly decision for government of South Africa, okay? It speaks about how South Africa's assets tumbled last week on worries of a tie-up with the more radical parties like the far-left EFF and former President Jacob Zuma's MK party, Umkhonto we Sizwe, as compared to a coalition that brings in pro-business party Democratic Alliance, okay? So it speaks about how financial and political analysts said on Monday the chances of an ANC-DA pact were higher than one involving MK or EFF. And the most likely result of South Africa's elections would be a deal between the ANC and the DA, and this would keep key economic policies unchanged and slightly improve the country's fiscal and growth outlook. Now, it says that the ANC got 40.2% of the vote last week, and the DA came second with 21.8%, and the MK came third with 14.6%, and the EFF came fourth at 9.5%. And that on that Monday, the rand traded at 18.6225 against the US dollar, up around 0.8% from Friday's close. Now, on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the top 40 index, which was up by 1.4%, the yield on the benchmark 2030 government yield bond fell 10.5 basis points to 10.595%, reflecting a stronger price. Okay, so a chief economist at the investment group Old Mutual said markets would view a coalition between the ANC, DA, and the socially conservative Inkatha Freedom Party favorable due to the promise of a more policy reform, stronger implementation, and a firm stance against corruption. So this is what the party trusts a coalition between the ANC, the DA, and the IFP, Inkatha Freedom Party. The IFP, now we know that the IFP got the 3.9% vote in the elections. And, this economists actually cautioned the markets that the markets were likely to remain volatile over the coming weeks, and that a negative coalition outcome would spark a sell-off. A sell-off here means more like capital flight. So whatever the outcomes of the government of national unity or coalition talks depends. At the moment, investors are actually sitting sort of like on capital, waiting for the choice that Cyril Ramaphosa and what the outcomes of the talks, the government of national unity, and that would actually, be a determinant of if capital flight in South Africa would leave, with full force or stay behind. And that's kind of like where the investors are at the moment. That's where capital is at the moment. That's the state where capital is at the moment. And with Rob Hersov actually argued that, he's not interested in investing anymore in South Africa. He will keep investing, but outside of South Africa. I think it's a really sad one. I remember in one of the videos I posted on this channel, one of the representatives of the UIM party actually spoke about how I think 40 or 50% of the billionaires in South Africa have actually left South Africa. That's a really big toll, because this means capital flight. It means that South Africa is actually losing a lot of the capital by which it has been built, a lot of the capital that have been invested in the major businesses and many industries in South Africa, and that to have 50% of the billionaires in South Africa leaving South Africa, it actually spells a lot of doom in that regard, because it would affect the farming industry, it would affect the banking industry, it would affect many other industries that actually employ people and help South Africans have a firm, kind of like a feeling of having a positive life, And so this would actually be really devastating if this massive capital flight gets out of South Africa. But the left-leaning parties, the EFF and the likes of the MK, aren't really worried about this, because they believe that they will be able to seek alternatives. So BRICS is one alternative. Russia, China, and these other BRICS countries could actually be called in to invest in South Africa, probably change the direction and the dominance of Western capital in driving development in South Africa. So this is the argument from the left-wing parties that, even though capital flights happens and it will be felt across the country, there will be a slow replacement of that with other alternatives, and that probably shifts South Africa more towards a much more left-leaning national development plan, so to speak. But what do you guys think about Rob Hersov's speech here? It's been quite a sad one, but share your thoughts in the comments.